Hello, today we continue on with some more logs to read after getting a whole bunch from Mute in the last part. So we just read about that scandalous incident between Oh Sojin and the what's Mute called insensitively the whore, or Hannah. And now we'll take a look at blocks 3 and 4. Alright, this is still about Oh Sojin and her husband Smith Sungmin. Brought home. These past few years have left me so very anxious with anticipation. Nearly a year has passed since the wedding ceremony, and before this week, Sungmin had only visited my family once, promising he would bring me home with him for sure the next time. I know I'm supposed to be enjoying living with my parents while it lasts, but all I can think about is my husband. How is a new bride expected to have such patience? For nearly a year, a day hasn't gone by where I haven't thought of how beautiful he thought me in my wedding dress, or how it felt spending that night held so gently in his strong hands, looking forward to the day where I could live in his house. I can't help but feel as anxious in my heart as I am excited in my hips. I know, it's ungraceful to think of such things, but how can I help myself? In any event, he arrived yesterday to take me with him to his ancestral shrine, and then finally his home. Such luxury I've never seen in my life. A servant to prepare meals, entirely separate women's quarters, and a dining room with a window that shows the stars. My family was hardly all that poor, but a window to the stars? How amazing a sight! I knew that I was lucky to have been married into a noble family, but I never realized just how lucky. I wonder if I'll have time to write as much as I used to. Oh, but I must stop for tonight now. I can hear my husband coming. I've been looking forward to this night for so long now. How I hope I can make him happy. Just hearing his footsteps outside the door makes my heart pound. Don't think she has anything to say. That's actually from before I knew her. It's pretty hard to imagine her as a blushing newlywed, honestly. She was an awfully good friend of mine. We chatted a lot. Look, don't get me wrong. She did a lot of things that were really wrong and really gross. I don't condone that, and I definitely don't understand it. I'm sure you know exactly what I mean. I just don't want you to think that I'm as bad a woman as she was or anything. Not that it could be cheating or anything. It's not like you can have love with just women. But still, gross. But please look past all that. Yes, she was a bad wife. But you have to understand, it wasn't her fault. It's like when I reported to my mistress, Yu Jaehua. None of the problems in her marriage were her own fault. She was just the wife of a lousy man, plain and simple. Mostly, she tried to do the best she could. I don't want you looking down on her, understand? I cannot believe just 2 years ago I was actually excited about moving into the Smith home with my husband. Oh, how shortly that lasted. I find it funny. The first time I realized that I would have to compete for his affections with every common woman, every courtesan he came across, I was so shocked. The first time he brought one home, I cried for a week, and mother-in-law was furious with me, claiming it my fault for not being enough for him. Now I realize the insanity of her reasoning, as if she wouldn't have already known her son was simply that sort of man. The only person who had any right to be shocked was me. Still, I struggle for his attention, but now it is all but banal. If the truth is to be told, this is something I would tell not mother-in-law, nor Mute, nor least of all my husband. I do not even fight for his affections for his own sake. It is pure selfishness on my part. All I wish is for some indicator that it isn't as though I'm unattractive, that it isn't as though I'm unlikable. Any affection he gets is simply an attempt at fishing that affirmation out of him, and nothing more. For the past 2 months, ever since it became impossible to hide that she was with child, Jamie has been living in our house, and no visitors have been allowed to come in. It has created an incredibly awkward state of affairs. I can hardly stand to be in the same room with that courtesan, let alone live with her. Until recently, so few words have we exchanged, I did not even know her name until the 3rd week of her living here. My husband has made me agree to go along with the fiction that the child is actually mine, which, well, I've yet to give him one myself, so if that is how I am to make up for it, then that is what I'll do. I thought it was going to be so hard to keep up that pretense, to pretend that this child is my own, while the real mother lives under the same roof. Yet apparently not. As it turns out, the whole charade has been for absolutely nothing. After all that, the child turned out to be a girl. Of course, I'm sure Jamie is quite happy, since she's already been bought out, in the hopes that we could pretend her son was mine. But an illegitimate daughter? Well, who cares? It would almost be funny, if not for the fact that it means I will have to live with that constant reminder of how little my husband cares for me. Almost, but not really. High Magistrate Smith Sangmin, huh? Well, as High Magistrate, he was one of the highest-ranking officials until just before the end. I don't want to paint a misleading portrait. As I understand, he was a very just man and performed his function quite well. It was politics that caught up to him in the end. It's like I reported to my mistress Yu Jiehua. He might have been a good magistrate, but his family conduct was less than the pinnacle of virtue. How many wives a man takes is no business but his own, and he never did anything illegal, but knocking up courtesans owned by the court? Man, that's just bad politics. And just completely unfair for his primary wife. Ugh, can you imagine? So that's why he lost his position. Years of embarrassment in the family finally culminated in him turning into a real liability for the emperor. But it wasn't always like that. Here, let me try to paint an even portrait of him for you. I've added an assortment of logs about him. I hope this gives a good idea of what I mean. I'm sorry, from Smith Sungmin to Uncle Daiho. Look, I'm sorry about our last conversation, alright? It's like I said to you before, you just caught me at a really bad time. Sojin was kept in bed rest on strict doctor's orders. I'm afraid that you brought your wife all the way to get turned away like that. When I told Sojin that you had given her well wishes on her pregnancy, she was happy. But sad she couldn't see you herself. Our child was just born last week. A daughter. We decided to name her Minhee. And Sojin is recovering well. The doctor said that it would be fine for her to see visitors next week. I'm sorry I got angry. If your wife still wants to see mine, or the child, or my mother, by all means you're welcome to visit. I really hope there's no hard feelings, Uncle. From Mute, a proper damn gentleman. A transcription fragment of a conversation held with Smith Sang-jung. Oh, that was how I knew shit had gotten worse. He actually agreed to let me pick the drinking house we went to. My oldest brother only ever humors me when he's really trying to get on my good side. It's never a good sign. Well, I mean, it's good for me, but certainly not for him. I'm sure a classy lady such as yourself wouldn't be familiar with this kind of place. Haha, no. You know the sort. Tucked away in an interior deck, lots of wood furniture that's been stained, and not intentionally, with just enough commoners milling about to give a good background soundtrack. Oh, and it's run by a woman. Nice lady, too. So it's that sort of place. We arranged to meet up at the door. It's been a while, brother. I'm sorry I couldn't speak to you sooner, he said, trying to be polite. You're full of shit, I said. But hey, it's good to see you. So what do you want? I meant it, he said. He's a bad, bad liar. So why here, anyway? At that point, the owner came by asking what we'd like. The only real thing you need to know about Janae is that she's around my age. She's got the biggest tits I've ever seen in my life, and she dresses like a commoner. So you can certainly see them. Oh, he said. Fair enough. Bring your finest soju, I ordered. Please, she responded. You can't afford our finest. Totally not true, by the way. My reputation for being a cheap drunk. Completely unfounded. Honest, I have no idea where people get these crazy ideas from. Anyway, far be it from me to argue, I just reply. Maybe not, but my brother can. I mean, I knew he was going to ask me for money. That was obvious. Might as well get as much as I could out of him before giving whatever he wanted, right? Fine. We'll be sharing that, he said. Then he added, but how much to share with you, too? With you, too. She blushed. Amazing, really. She's got a lot of practice dealing with people like my brother, but I saved her the misery of having to flirt back with him. Do you really need more of that kind of trouble right now? With that, he let her go. Anyway, drinks came. We argued about the loose definition of finest, our server's tits, and the good old days when father was still alive and we didn't have to work out our problems ourselves. The biggest bullshit ever, I said, is that we're expected to be responsible men here. How'd that happen? He laughed, and was now drunk enough to start taking cheap shots. Is that why you've never bothered to be one? Ouch, I said. Damn it. Hurry up and pour me more. I'll drink to that. He poured, but didn't say anything. All right. So what is it that you want? I'm getting the impression that you have a problem, and you want discretion, because you're talking to me. Right, brother? I was right. So where did you put it this time, brother? I asked. Put what? He replied. Oh, cut the shit, I said. We both know full well that all your problems in life have always, without fail, stemmed from you putting your dick somewhere you shouldn't have. He grunted in disagreement, but it's totally true. Was it at least a female this time? I swear to my father, brother was right about to punch me. Didn't, though. Instead, he just downed his drink. Yeah, that's the damn problem, he said. She's saying she hasn't bled in 2 months now. A courtesan. I promised him I'd help. Better she gets bought out by me than by my brother, the High Magistrate. Less suspicious that way, and involves nothing unlawful. Believe me now? A proper damn gentleman. That's me. Well, this is what I told him at the time. I could have, maybe, done without the description of her breasts. But that kind of story was definitely pretty common for him. The part where he cleaned up after his family's mess. I mean, not the details about immoral-looking common women. And, well, the drinking, too. But, look, that part he had good cause for. Sure, it was his ruins. But you can't blame a man for that. I mean, the stuff he had to put up with. If your brother had it like that, I'm sure he'd do the same. It wasn't all that bad, really. We'd spend a lot of evenings drinking together, talking long into the night. Well, he would, anyway. Obviously not really so much drinking on my part. But he was the kind of man who'd still pour a glass for you all the same. So that whole sarcastic image about him being a proper gentleman, it's not sarcastic. He really was. Well, he was being sarcastic, but still. He totally, absolutely was the best damn gentleman around. Legendary temper or no luck? No luck. To the wife of Sang-Q, actually, hold on. Yeah. You can probably put this more diplomatically than I can, because I'm pretty sure younger brother is still thoroughly pissed off at me. You know how he is, of course. I don't have the time to deal with that, especially when I'm already doing him a huge favor. The bad news is, I made an appeal to the captain and Emperor himself personally, but he said there was no position that a man of Sang-Q's skill set could possibly fulfill. I did most certainly plead, but let's face it, what official role could that man possibly fill? He's an idiot. Don't pass on that last part. He already knows. I did, however, speak to Park Sun, and was able to convince him to forget the whole incident. It wasn't cheap, I might add. I'll continue to send your family a regular stipend, but please keep your husband under control. I can't afford to keep cleaning up after his damned fights. I know it sounds like Sangmin is just being harsh on his little brother, but I assure you, his characterization of him isn't wrong. I honestly kind of tended to avoid him. I was friends with his older brother, his wife, and his younger brother was an absolute gentleman, but he was not a very nice man. He was the sort of person that the court exams were supposed to keep out in theory. Didn't work, of course. He studied just as well as brothers, or so Sang-Jung told me. Here, you want to see the usual sort of behavior that you'd get from Smith Sang-Q? I've added another entry, this one by the Kim's son. A clerk, legendary temper. Now I've been a clerk for a while, and it's not as if I haven't heard all the stories about High Magistrate Smith Sang-min and his legendary temper, but I always figured they were an exaggeration. Especially after I met him for the first time, the man seemed like the absolute model of a gentleman, and rather calm and unemotional. I'm not criticizing him, I just never imagined that man getting angry. It was while an official was presenting the facts of a murder case to him. A drunken brawl between peasants gone horribly wrong. It all seemed satisfactory enough. A dozen men had seen it, so there wasn't really any doubt about it. So far, so good. Very well, the High Magistrate said. Let me read the confession, then, before I pass a sentence. The official didn't have one, which is reasonable enough. A lot of times, they can't get it out of them, and I've never seen a magistrate who was really all too concerned about those little details. Excuse me? You don't have a confession, he said, and his mood soured right there. Why are you wasting my time, then? He looked at the accused, who had been kowtowing silently up until that point. Do you even admit to killing him? The murderer seemed confused, and it took a minute to realize he was being addressed. Furthermore, when he did figure it out, he simply kept mumbling, "Not my fault, wasn't my fault," and the such. The High Magistrate was furious. What is wrong with you? What is this man doing in front of me in a state like that? He doesn't admit to doing it. What do you expect me to do? He demanded. After some silence from the official, he continued. It wasn't a rhetorical question. Please, enlighten me. What do you expect me to do here? To punish him? The official finally offered, weakly, as confused about the matter as I was. Punish him. This was what set him completely off the edge. He stood up, shouting, "We are not given the responsibility of punishment. What are we? Barbarians looking for vengeance? The point of justice is to teach immoral men like him the error of their ways," he lectured, shouting at the top of his lungs. And how do you expect to do that with a man who won't even admit his own actions? Does this man look like he's ready to learn? Do you seriously believe that? Are you simple? The official looked as though he was about to argue, but then thought about it. Smart move. The High Magistrate continued, more calmly. Now stop wasting my time, and get him out of my office. Come back when you have a confession and a clue as to what your job actually entails. And with that, he left, leaving the official speechless, and leaving me realizing that perhaps a legendary temper and being a model gentleman weren't quite so mutually exclusive as I had thought. See, he wasn't always that bad. He was an embarrassment, and far from a pinnacle of virtue. I didn't think that highly of him, but at the end of the day, it was about politics, not about his character. Oops. It's a lot more stuff here. Just one here. The new bruise from Young Suk's wife. I don't even remember who these people are. Dearest Mother, I really could use your advice. Husband has been working very late into the night recently, on some business that he won't even share with me. I understand his reluctance to talk to me about things his superior has sworn him to secrecy on, and that damn child has been keeping me plenty busy, but I still wish he could tell me. Last night, he was out even later than normal, and when he finally did return, he had a black eye. His face and hands bloodied. He looked really bad. The sight of that really scared me. Of course, you of all people know that I'm heartily squeamish at the sight of blood. It was how hurt he looked. I hurried him to the kitchen and started to clean his wounds. I'll admit my voice wavered when I asked, "Husband, what happened?" He was reluctant to answer and grunted in pain when I convinced him to put ice on his bruised eye. He finally did. And you absolutely can't repeat what he said to me, do you understand? Not a word of it, to anyone, not even to Father. But I truly need advice. I had some questions for the High Magistrate's office. He sent his brother, Smith St. Q, to answer them. That's the dumb, nasty one. My husband trailed off, thinking. I asked him something that he didn't agree with. I had the moral high standing, but he had the physical high standing. His wounds clean, I didn't know what to do, but touched the uninjured part of his face to comfort him. Then he joked. Turns out, his argument hurt a whole lot more than mine. But I could tell, underneath that, he was truly hurt. What do I do, Mother? How is a woman supposed to respond to such an awful thing happening? I've tried to comfort him as best as I can, but I just don't know what else I can do. Mother, please, you must have some advice. Oh, hey, wait. That reminds me of something else. Well, you know Hannah, right? The whore who got herself seduced by Sojin. There's not really a lot of writing from her, but I've got a log entry from Kim Young-suk about her. You probably want to see it. Right, well, I'll let you get back to it then. But I figured that's probably something you're pretty interested in. Is it also in Block 9? Yay, Block 9 complete. The New Bribe. Kim's Young-suk. The incident occurred right as I was leaving the magistrate's office after a late night of going through some of his paperwork. The corridor lights had long ago dimmed, and the office should have been empty, so the horse linked against the wall, right outside, definitely stood out. She was small and looked very young, and obviously she was dressed like any commoner, with her arms covering otherwise exposed breasts and all. I won't lie and say she wasn't attractive. She certainly was. I'm sure she's very good at her role. Hi, the whore said, approaching me. You're Kim Young-suk, right? I said yes. My name is Hannah, she said, offering her hand to shake it. It's an honor to meet you. I didn't take it and told her that it wasn't appropriate to be talking to her like that, talking to her now. But I've got a message from Smith Sungmin that he really insisted I deliver, the whore said, moving closer. Can I come inside? I said no, of course. Even then I could tell exactly where this was going, and was not pleased. Please. He was really insistent, she said, putting her hand on my face and smiling. I slapped it away instantly and shoved her into the wall. Tell him I said no. I snapped at the whore and walked away. She chased after me for a while, but eventually she seemed to realize that she wasn't going to get to me, and gave up. She was gone by the time I got home. I still can't believe he actually thought that would work. Now I want to know more about what the High Magistrates' association with that whore even was. One last block to look at before asking Hyunei some questions, unless Mute gives me some more documents here. Ooh. Morning dress. Yu Jae-hwa, this is the individual that Mute was highly associated with. The wife of the man who married the Pale Bride. Normally, my conversations with Mute are of a rather frivolous nature. Gossip in the affairs of some of the more important noble houses, as well as her trying to bait whatever she is able out of me. While I think such a flow of information is valuable, so I might pass news to my husband that he might not otherwise hear, I would not consider her attitude to have any resemblance to seriousness. Previously, I had assumed that this was simply impossible due to her nature. While I do not really understand how, despite her explanations, anyone could live inside a computer screen, she says that she is an artificial person. I had assumed that, perhaps, her absence of a soul prevented her from feeling serious emotions. Ordinarily, she wears incredibly bold, colorful clothing, her golden hair absurdly well adorned. For the past month, however, she has been uncharacteristically humble, wearing unappealing brown dress with her hair undecorated. My curiosity got the better of me at last. Please, I've wondered. Why are you so attired? It is unlike you, I asked. She gave me an odd look. Huh? She asked. It's morning dress. That much was obvious, and not particularly the thrust of my question. Did you not tell me you were thousands of years old, and that you have no family? For what reason are you wearing mourning? She gave me an annoyed look. A friend of mine died, okay? No, I don't have a family. It's always been just me. But this guy was a really good friend, and he definitely deserves that kind of respect, she said. We were super close. Do you wish to tell me about him? I asked. She gave me another look that I couldn't quite read, but seemed somehow sad. Nah, she said. I don't want to talk about it. Not now. I miss him too much. Hey, I'm going to go now, okay? I'll talk to you later. I said goodbye to her, and she disappeared from the computer screen. But as she did, I could have sworn that I saw her start to cry. Well, yeah. She probably did see me cry. I had a really hard time talking about it then, especially not to my mistress. I really didn't mean to be so vulnerable in front of her. That just isn't proper. Kind of embarrassing, actually, really. I'm sure you've already guessed, but yeah, the man in question was Smith Songjung. Strictly speaking, there was no real mourning obligation. It's not like I was really family. Still, the man was the closest thing to a husband to me. I mean, don't take this the wrong way. It's hardly scandalous. I'm not a real woman. I'm just a computer. But we had a really close relationship. So yeah, I thought it'd be appropriate if I honored him like he was. He never married, so it's not like anyone else would. I just figured the man deserved that much. He totally deserved at least that much. Sigh. Letter to Songmin from Smith Song-hee. Oh, dearest brother of mine. As I'm sure you know, it's been 3 years since my husband died. I still mourn him in my heart, of course, and I'm sure I will forever, but the official mourning period's over. You probably also know that the Huang family isn't doing very well right now. Terribly, in fact, and it only got worse when my husband died. It didn't help that we only had daughters, so I don't exactly have a son to look after me. Right now, I'm completely at the mercy of his parents. And, well, as I said, no son. They only took me in because of that big dowry. They sure never liked me, and it's only gotten worse. Way worse. So I need you to help me out, Min, or they're just going to abandon me. Do you remember that story we read together as a child, about that widow who had to turn to begging? I'm sure you remember how it ended. Well, that's going to be me at this rate. Don't worry, though. I have a plan. I've talked to my husband's brother about this, and also I managed to discreetly fish some information out of his parents. They'd be willing to let me get married to him, and all you need to do is chip in a new dowry. 1.5 times the old one would be enough. Please respond as soon as possible, little brother, because I really need your help here. Love, Song-hee. Same thing. Sister Song-hee, calm down. This may not be nice, but I'm sure they're not going to kick their son's widow out onto the street. Do you have any idea how terrible that would look for them? It would be a huge disgrace on their name. As for remarrying, I'm sorry, but that's a lot of money you're asking. Besides, you know how much remarriage is looked down upon. Chaste widowhood may be a difficult standard to hold yourself to, but you will be honored forever if you can manage it. And if anyone is good enough to live up to that standard, I know it's you, big sister. I wish I could give you an easier way out, but I hope you realize it's for the best that way. Sangmin. Oh, generous and benevolent young brother of mine. I know you think I'm being hysterical and exaggerating. I'm not, I promise. It's funny you mentioned the importance of chaste widowhood, because they're talking about that, too. Of course, I don't think you've got the same ideas in mind. They're talking about the sort that ends in an honorable suicide. Actually, they've been talking about it a lot. We could, of course, go with that option. Take my own life to honor his memory. Would you like to help me out with that? I'm not really very good at either holding knives or tying nooses ever since the arthritis got serious. But if you could help out, that plan could work. If you're too busy to help your sister kill herself, though, you could just do the next best thing and send that dowry. I'm sure, however, you'll manage to figure out a way to find the money. I have faith in you, little brother. I remind you again, of course, that appealing to that family's honor is a waste of time. Father married me to a merchant, remember? You're talking about honor, but trust me, I've lived in this house for over 2 decades, and I've looked everywhere, even under the sitting cushions. They just don't have any. So I'm going to ask you once more, little brother. You can either send a new dowry, or failing that, come by with a nice, sharp knife. But if you can't bring yourself to do at least one of those things, then my destitution is on your head. Do you think Father would be proud of that? You are the son, you tell me. With love, your sister Song-hee. Another response. Sister, you are going to be the death of me, but I won't be the death of you. Fine, I'll figure something out. Tell his parents that I can offer them as much as the old dowry. I'll send a messenger by next week to work out the delivery of it. You're such a woman, do you know that? Manipulative to the core. That's what you are. The death of me, I swear, Sangmin. Meets questions. Mute. How are you doing? Look, the questions are for her. They're perfectly straightforward. I don't think any need explanation. Take them to her yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. It's probably best if you hear it straight from the crazy bitch's mouth herself. Does she say anything else? Okay, so I can't help but notice that you haven't gone back to Hyunnae to get the whole story about the murders. Why is that? Is it because you don't believe me even enough to ask her? No. Oh, well, that's good. Do you think it's just not important enough to ask about then? No. Okay. I was hoping you'd say that, honestly. All I can think then is that you'd rather just hear it from me. Am I right? Yes. Oh, all right. I just figured. It's an awfully bold thing to claim about someone you've already met, so it's better to hear it from her directly. But if you do trust me, then sure. Let me warn you, though. The way this interface of hers is set up, I can actually see every single message that you flagged as read. Not what she said, mine, but I can tell which logs you've seen. So obviously she can see that too. And let's be honest, that crazy bitch is going to flip out completely if she sees her beloved sisterly rescuer knows the whole story. Like, I wouldn't enable her after this, if I were you. This is going to be the point of no return with you two. So I leave it up to you. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Maybe not now. Okay, fair enough. If you change your mind, just let me know. So I'm sure you've noticed all the static on the line, and are wondering what's going on, right? I'm going to tell you something really bad. I need you to promise me that you're not going to panic, okay? Okay. Great. Just keep it together. We'll be okay if you don't get emotional, but... Well, right now we're in the middle of a nuclear fission reactor meltdown. I'm sure you don't know what that means, and it's okay. You don't have to worry your pretty little head with the details. The bottom line here is that if it doesn't get shut down soon, there's going to be a massive, massive explosion. Well then. Right. Well, ordinarily this would be something you'd want to get a man to do, but it's okay. I'm sure you'll be able to pull through just fine. I have the utmost confidence in you. We've got 20 minutes until the reactor goes all up, killing both of us permanently. Clock starts now. I'm going to walk you through shutting it down. This might be a little hard, but you're a clever girl. I have faith in you. The first thing we're going to try to do is just simply using the disable action. I don't think this will work, mind you, but you never know. The ship's been in such a state of disrepair and non-maintenance, it's probably going to be really complicated. Still, try that for me, will you? Drop down to the terminal and just try shutting down the reactor directly.